Hello, everybody. My name is Nicholas PHAN, and I am the Artistic Director of Collaborative Arts Institute of Chicago, and welcome to tonight's episode of Heard Over the Piano, CAIC's online discussion series. Hello, everybody. If you have any... I am the Artistic Director of Collaborative... Some technical difficulties already. So if you notice anything going wrong with the technical issues of this, please throw those comments into the comment section of the Facebook chat, and I will make sure to monitor that, and we'll do our best to address those as they happen. If you also have any questions for tonight's amazing guest, Sasha Cooke, please also throw those into the comments, and we will definitely make sure that we ask those of Sasha as well. Sasha, you're here.
Hi.
How are you?
Great to see you. I'm happy to see you.
It's great to see you too. I'm so happy to see you too. I mean, I see you have power.
Luckily, yeah, Texas was a mess last week, and many people had it much worse than we did. So,
well, I'm glad you guys are okay. I was thinking of you guys. I mean, it just, the idea of roads freezing over in Texas is just insane.
And snow. I mean, we never have snow ever. I think in 30 years, maybe once there have been some snowflakes, and this was like full on sledding material, inches. So I was trying to fly home from Los Angeles, and I was stranded. I couldn't get out for 3 days. I mean, can you imagine not being able to fly into a major airport like Houston for 3 days?
No.
And then there's my family at home, power's out, water pipe bursts. It was just like, all the guilt, all the feelings,
Well, I'm sure they managed just fine, but oh my gosh, wow.
Kelly says hi, by the way.
Hi, Kelly. I'm so glad you guys are okay, and I'm so glad you're doing well. You look amazing, as always.
So do you.
Well, you're very sweet. Thank you. I'm trying out this new camera. It keeps crashing on us. So Facebook, I'm so sorry if that happens again this week. We will just keep our fingers crossed that it doesn't and that the new toy works. So you are an amazing artist. You've been all over the world. You've won Grammys twice. You have sung with just about every major orchestra and opera company and sung recitals everywhere. And I think let's just start this conversation by perhaps just telling us how you got here. I mean, I think a lot of people who are watching are young singers who want to be you or want to be like you when they grow up. And so let's start there. Were we in Houston at the same time together, right?
Well, I heard you in the Houston program. So I saw you in Lucia. I know there must have been other shows. I was at Rice, because when were you in the Houston program?
2002 to 2005.
Yeah, I finished at Rice in 2004. I remember hearing Laquita. I remember hearing you and Josh Hopkins and Heidi.
Right.
Houston, I mean, I think I was really lucky because, Rice was very good to me, and Houston, just seeing the level of Houston Grand Opera growing up, knowing that kind of opera, like if I were in a town with a bad opera company, I don't know, maybe I would have been crazy. My mom always talks about this time that I saw Sam Raimi and Mephistopheles, because she said after that day, I was just changed, like opera, I was bitten by the bug. I don't know, Nick. I mean, you're probably the same. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to this crazy thing called a career, right? It's very, which I find unnerving, because there are so many great singers that don't have careers. And yet there are also people that are kind of like, oh, that's interesting, and they have fabulous careers. So I don't think it's like, oh, well, if I get these degrees and I go to these places and I talk to these important people, I'm going to have work. I mean, even now it's still a juggling act. And I kind of wanted to commiserate with you about that, about this new normal of, all these things being canceled. And suddenly, for the first time in a while, you're thinking, am I an artist? Am I going to be working next year and the year after that and the year after that? So I have a couple things I think really helped me, which I often do share with young singers. Like gratitude, I think, is really big. I think it's very important to stay humble. I think in this world in which comparison culture is just an easy path to go down, and we're becoming more consumed with our appearances and media, it's so easy to lose touch with acting as a vehicle for art, for spirit, for the composer, for the orchestra. And I think that staying humble and gratitude and keeping connected to gratitude have been a big part of my story, because I have this one anecdote from Dallas Opera. I was singing with David Lomelli in France, and he had just taken the new position at Dallas Opera. So he was still kind of doing both at that one moment. And I said, oh yeah, I sang at Dallas once. And he said, yeah, I know, I saw your file. You write thank you notes. And I was like, that's interesting. That's in my file. Wow. And maybe it's not a thing, but I just think that what you think comes through. And a singer, especially, because we're a flesh instrument, because we are the instrument that faces the audience directly, more so than any other instrument, what we put in our head comes out in our spirit and our sound. So if you think, how do I look? How do I sound? Then we're thinking about how you look and how you sound. But if you think, thank you for being here, so nice to be with you, Nick, you know, I think people feel that, and then they're like, oh, I want to work with her, she's really nice to work with. And then I show up prepared. I mean, I tell young singers this too, be prepared. Maybe it's a weird expression to use, flesh instrument, but I do tend to use it, and preparation's related to that too. Because if you cram something in, it's there. I mean, there's muscle memory. But if you take the time, and everyone has different time, like some people need a year for something, some people need a week. So it's that calibration of how much can I handle? When should I start that? How do I want to learn it? And then when you show up, you're ready. You're not thinking about pitches or rhythms or translation. You're thinking about nuance and your colleagues and the atmosphere and where you're going to go get dinner. You know, like I think, so gratitude, preparation, and gratitude, preparation. I mean, I have two more. One is your gut. I remember hearing Matthew Epstein. I was at Music Academy of the West, and I was like 18, or yeah, I think I was 18 or 19. And he came to talk to Marilyn Horne, and she said, what do you think is the defining characteristic of someone who has a career? And he said, gut. And I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean, gut? And over the years, I've thought that he means checking in with yourself about what you believe and listening to your intuition, because so often everyone's giving you advice. Everyone has an opinion about what you should be singing, how you should be singing, what you should be wearing. And a lot of people can give over their power and lose their power, and then they lose themselves. So like, my voice teacher wants me to, well, what do you want? Like, what do you want? And I think we can lose ourselves. So I think gut is important. And sometimes I still have to figure it out. I'm like, do I want to do this job? Do I want to do this job? You know, being open. I never would have imagined singing contemporary music. I never would have imagined being someone who sings more symphonic, or maybe 60% symphonic jobs. Why would I have thought that, you know? But then someone say, hey, Sasha, will you learn my piece for next week? Yeah, sure. Hey, Sasha. And I started to realize that was unique. I didn't know that. So those little things, like, I think when I look back, and I think I've told you this, Nick, I was a kid that was picked on a lot, you know, for being chubby. And so music was always my safe space. Music was my private dominion, you know, no one could touch that really. And I loved that so much. And it was the piano for the majority of my childhood, and then viola, and then singing, kind of choir. And then I got into Rice, and I remember my mom came to a voice lesson. She had never really heard me like that. And she started crying, and she said, where have you been hiding this voice? And I had been hiding my voice. I was just shy. I never would sing C above middle C in the choir because I thought I would stick out. I thought I did stick out. And my first teacher, whom you know, Kathleen Cowan, my first teacher at Rice, I should say, my first voice teacher in Texas was Kirby Gordon. But at Rice, she said, I remember I said, Kathy, I just want to sound like the other girls. I want to sound like Queen of the Night. And she said, Sasha, it's good to be different. And I was like, is it?
Yes.
And a light bulb went off. I mean, it literally, I remember when I auditioned at Rice, she said, you have a beautiful timbre. And I was like, ta-ta, what's a timbre? I had no idea. But I learned over time, like, oh, it's good to be different. Nothing wrong with that, you know? So that's like a little snapshot of what my theories are. Although I think it's also luck and timing. Studying in New York, I think helped me. I had jobs while I was a master's student. You know, I had my first New York Times review when I was a master's student at Juilliard. Like, that's unique to be living the life while still in the safety, relative safety of, you know, conservatory.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that for sure. It's very, you end up growing up in public, and that's hard. And it's the thing about New York is that's so funny is if you go to school there, like you did, I went there for 1 year, and the local paper is the New York Times. So
I
when
know.
you know, it's not like the Schenectady Gazette just shows up and like
I know.
accuse you. It's like Tony Tomasini is there from the
Yeah.
New York Times, and
Yeah.
there you are. And I mean, I actually have to say, I think the Times is amazing at, you know, recognizing what is
Totally.
what and lifting up what needs, you know, being constructive in its criticism. But it's like,
You're
it's
so right.
intense.
Well, it's also for better and worse because I know at Juilliard, there's a pressure from them to put on, you know, the really ready people. And I remember realizing that as I was there, that some students didn't get the same attention at a small, like a relatively small program. I'm thinking, shouldn't all the singers get performing opportunities? And it was not exactly that way. And I think part of it is pressure of New York and pressure of the Times and pressure of the exposure of Lincoln Center and all of that. And then I started to think, well, maybe that's what it should be because that's what the life is like. It's not fair, you know?
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, that's a pedagogical choice, right? You know, it's
Yeah.
sort of, are we going to give you the skills by giving you the chance to do the thing? Or are we going to start immediately teaching you what we believe the real world is like? And that's a tough call, I think, for an institution. And
Yeah, totally.
you know, there are upsides and downsides to it, and there can be backlash.
Uh, P.S. Speaking of institutions, I was just like, when did I first meet Nick? And I found this photo from Marlborough,
Oh my God, with Will Ferguson.
2008 with Will Ferguson. I
I have,
mean, that was a while ago. That was a while ago. How cute are you?
you're so sweet. I look like a child in that picture. Oh my
No,
gosh.
no, it's been a while. I was thinking because we've actually crossed paths in a number of places, you know.
Right. We have, but it's hard. It's funny. When I was preparing for today, I was thinking like, where did we meet? Like, I feel like I've known you forever and I couldn't pinpoint it, but Marlboro is where I kind of came to it as well. Like, which, I mean, I had a wonderful experience at Marlboro, and maybe, I mean, some people who are watching may not know what Marlboro is. So would you
Yeah.
mind describing it and then tell us about your experience there?
Well, my experience probably isn't, it's not fair to say because I only had a part of that summer. I think I had a job in Israel and they still let me come for the second half of the summer. Marlborough is an extraordinary place where the priorities are very different from your normal summer program. It's not even a summer program, I would say. It's a communion of musicians meeting in the hills to dive into repertoire of their choosing and work together, often led by one sort of master teacher. So, one sort of more senior artist will be in the group or the ensemble of whatever piece you're working on, and they act like a mentor. And the idea is that you don't perform, you're not gearing everything up to a performance, you're just enjoying living together in that music, which is really extraordinary. And you see so many families that come. I mean, I kind of wish I could go back. The next summer, we were getting married, and I couldn't. It was again a situation where they were like, "Well, you really should come back when you can do the whole thing." And I was like, "Ah, I want to come back," but I loved it. I mean, I had a lot of very meaningful experiences. I remember crying. Like it was just one of those bonding. You know, it felt like being a monk. You wake
Yeah.
up, you eat, you study, you eat, you study, you sleep. And I love
Yes.
that. No responsibilities, no concerns, right?
Yeah, no, except for just be at rehearsal and be prepared.
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
is funny because that responsibility is only to your other colleagues who are your friends. And so in a way,
right.
you know, it doesn't feel like a responsibility like I have to. It feels like it feels like duty and honor. Like,
I know. And then there's Mitsuko Uchida, like getting a sandwich right next to you in the
yes,
coffee shop.
yes.
Yeah,
Having that weird breakfast sandwich in the
that's
coffee
right.
shop.
She had like her sandwich. Did you ever go on a Richard Good year?
I did. I was there for 4 summers, and so I got two of each basically.
That's
Um,
amazing.
it was special. I mean, I loved it too. And actually, to be to be totally honest, a lot of what CAIC is now, at least for me, my inspiration was from there, because I had been doing, my career was really opera heavy up until my first summer there, and which was 1 year before that picture, so I probably looked even more childlike, and I I was just so fired up to sing songs again, and it made me remember why I wanted to be a musician in the first place, what my favorite parts of being a musician were. And it was a summer where I came to this realization, because I mean I was like 3-4 years out of the studio then, and I was in my late 20s, so I was kind of like in the groove and doing the thing. And I had this realization that summer that I was not listening to what it is that I wanted to do. I was thinking about what should I do, and what is what is the industry telling me I should do, and what, are all these consultants telling me what I should do, and what is my voice teacher? Well, my voice teacher's never told me what to do, except sing well.
Good.
But it's she was one of the few people who would ask me, what do you want to do? And I always got really stymied by that question, and I would dismiss it in my lessons, thinking, if I want to get to the next step, I have to learn how to sing this Rossini aria, not even thinking about the fact that I hate Rossini. So, I got there and I thought, wow, I'm not happy. And I think I'm actually quite close to quitting. And
Wow.
yeah, and being there made me realize how much I did not want to quit, and what I actually wanted to do. And so for me personally, out of the three of us that got together and co-founded this situation, that was when I remember coming to Chicago, a few months after my first summer there, and sitting down with Shannon and just being like, hey, we should start something, because I had this great summer and I want to do more of that, and there's no platform for it. So let's make one. And, it turned into this, which is beyond anything we ever would have dreamed of. But Marlboro actually for me it was kind of where I realized or remembered in some ways, a lot of the things you were talking about being so important to remember as an artist, and to remember that you are an artist and not like some sort of imitation machine that's trying to kind of be the next X, Y, or Z.
I love that, Nick, because I think a lot of people don't realize they're not happy until it's really late. And I think you and I probably, have that in common, that we know many people who suffer through anxiety, alcohol, relationship. Like there's just a lot of upheaval. And
Yeah.
it's not for everybody. And that's okay. Except when you are an artist, you think, oh, am I going to, let XYZ people down? Who am I? We're so wrapped up. I mean, it's a big part of why this pandemic has been hard, for the same reason. It's really hard to stop being an artist, which really you're not ever stopping, but it's hard to step away from the pursuit, because you're taught that you need to want it so badly, that a normal human wouldn't consider other options, and then you get in it and it's like, well, of course it's not supposed to be for everyone. You don't know what it is when you're in school. You don't know how lonely it is, and you don't know the stakes on stage. Like, I think you can study, I think I can think of a lot of fabulous singers, but they just don't do well under pressure, and that's a huge part of it. Like, I was, especially since working with singers during this pandemic and starting to teach a little bit, I've had to quantify these things, like what makes a career, just like we're talking about. And I wonder if you've thought about it. And I think a huge percentage is that pressure piece. Because like when I think of the performers who have careers, something happens on stage, they come alive, like you, like it's better, like better than they could have anticipated. And that you can't know. Like, are you a straight stage creature? I don't know until you get there. And like when I think of concert work, plane, arrive, drive, rehearsal, performance. I mean, there's no time to be like, I need to have my tuna fish sandwich. No, you have to just go, and who knows? And some people really unravel, you
Yeah,
know.
it takes a toll, and you have to know if you can deal with it. I think the other thing is, this is one thing in which personally I felt I was lucky, and it's funny to hear you say a lot of these things because they remind me so much of what my teacher at Michigan said to me. But I remember when I was 18 sitting down with her and asking her, because my parents were like, you should have a backup plan. So I enrolled as a dual degree situation. And and after my first year of college, I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm just doing that to make mom and dad happy. I'm going to go talk to my voice teacher and she's going to tell me I can make it. And then I can go home and tell mom and dad that I'm dropping out of, the other degree. And that's what my mindset was thinking at the time. But when I asked her that question of, what does it take to make it? She said, it takes a lot of things to make it. And she gave me a list of things, like talent, perseverance, intelligence, skill, discipline. She's like, you've got all of those things. But what nobody's qualified to tell you is you have to have luck. And so much of that is, being in the right place at the right time. Are you someone who functions really well under pressure? Are you someone who's not functioning really well under pressure? Like, these are the things that you learn about yourself as you go along. And then she said to me, you have to understand that there are a lot of ways to be successful as a musician. She said, you could be teaching voice to high school students in Livonia, Michigan. You could be singing on the stage of the Metropolitan Opera. You could be singing on the stage of Carnegie Hall. You could be singing in the professional chorus of the Lyric Opera of Chicago. You could be teaching voice at a university. She said, as long as you are drawing a paycheck from being a musician, you are successful. And not any one of those things is more or less successful than the other. And, being 18, I remember thinking like, oh, I'm going to be famous. And, running off and being like, right, I can do this. But in retrospect, that was that 10 minutes of a voice lesson was something that has stuck with me my entire life and makes me think a lot of puts me in a similar mindset about what you're describing, where it's like, you got to keep open because you never have any idea how this is going to look. And what's important is just putting one foot in front of the other.
Mm-hmm. I remember Denise Massé in the Met program. One time we were in the cafeteria and I had known her from Juilliard. So she was a coach at Juilliard. And then I went over to the Met and I remember we were sitting there. She said, no, sorry. So this is where the story was. It was at Juilliard when I told her I got in. Yeah, that's what it was. I said, oh, I got in. She goes, don't become one of those, Met young artists who thinks that everything is the Met. She said, there is art everywhere. And there's art, especially in the smallest places you can imagine. And I remember thinking, well, of course I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to think, the Met is the belly button of the world. And that has definitely been true. And I don't like that question in interviews when people say, what have been your highlights, the best moments? I always think everything is awesome. Like every job is awesome. And it's so hard to have a hierarchy. What determines that? What you see as prestige, what I see as more glamorous or bigger or more blah, it's of course I do have answers to that question. I mean, there are some favorite moments, but
right.
you know what I mean.
But no, that sounds very much like Denise Massé. I only worked with her once, but I remember being so taken with her thinking, this is a wise woman.
She's intense. I was lucky to work with her and Kervalet during those years, and I learned so much. And I did Péléas with her and Les Troyens with Pierre, and boy, are they sticklers for, and it's informed everything I do, in French, both of them. Don't you love that when people who are also amazing kind of musicological people happen to give you life advice that's like spot on?
Yeah.
I love that. I like Betsy Bishop in the Met cafeteria. One time I was doing Iphigénie on Tauride. That was my debut in the Met program. And she was like, get a savings account. Start saving for taxes. I was like, what? I have to save for taxes? She's like, yes, 30%. Put it to the side. Don't touch it. When you get a job, put it to the side. And I remember thinking like, that's so nice of this, mezzo who's been in the business longer than me, passing that on to me. And we have thousands of these stories, but I don't know. I don't know why I'm going down that path.
No, it's great. I mean, it's wonderful when we're surrounded by people who
Yeah.
I don't know, the people who you remember are the ones who enjoy life, understand that this is an art form and not just a business, and are, you know,
Mm-hmm.
trying to say things that touch all aspects of it.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I mean, let's, you know, we're a song organization. That's our mission. And I would, one of the things that, and you have to come, please sing a recital for us sometime
Absolutely.
once we can, like, you know, make everything work, like get a spot in your very busy schedule. But can you talk a little bit about song and why you think it's important and how, I mean, you know, I know we all study it in school, but what I find really interesting about you is that you navigated a rather traditional operatic young artist path, but it's remained something very important to you throughout your career. And that doesn't happen for a lot of people. Say they want that, but a lot of people don't end up having that come true in practicality.
Yeah.
So how have you done it, and why have you done it?
Oh, I mean, as you were speaking, I was thinking of Jerry Finley's quote about how no singer should not have like not be able to sing song. Like, how can you be a singer if you can't sing song? It should. And Marilyn Horne, I think, wasn't allowed to start on arias until she was 21 and had done all of these songs, like huge swaths of song. I think that's really true. I think that should be our bread and butter. I don't think it always is, because in song we can find ourselves. And I think in opera, often we can put on appearances or put on whatever. And I think sometimes the cart's before the horse or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Um, I was lucky because I got into young concert artists. And that was a big part of my story. So I was in Juilliard. I met amazing Steve Blyer. He was kind of my coach, weekly coach. So at Juilliard, actually similar to Rice, I had an amazing person at Rice too, Michael Franciosi. I saw every week, and we worked on da da da. And Steve, of course, is a song master. And so there we were, jumping into all kinds of song. And then there was a cancellation at New York Festival of Song. So I had to step in for a mezzo who canceled. That was this other kind of like aha moment, like getting to perform recital material in New York. That. And then someone said, you need to be in this competition. It's called Young Concert Artists. I'm like, oh, what is it? Oh, just you need to enter it. And there I was with Pei Yao Wang, one of my best friends, who was a pianist in the Met program. We won. And when you win, you get a Carnegie Hall recital, a Kennedy Center recital, and management, essentially. I remember when I was in the Met program, Lenore said, I shouldn't have let you do that competition, because I didn't know what it required, like what it was going to take of you, which was that while being in the Met, I got to escape to go do recital all the time. So it was fabulous. I had both worlds. I was getting the opera, you know, training, and then finding myself on the road in middle of nowhere, Oregon, where the power went out in the middle, or, you know, Lawrence, Kansas, or Georgia, you know, singing to a high school, and the first time they ever heard classical music, and people saying, and then playing games with Schumann and them trying to guess the titles of Schumann. I mean, I got to have all these fabulous experiences because of YCA. And I remember my first Carnegie recital, the review said, the last line said, composers are going to, I'm going to say it wrong. It was Steve Smith. He wrote, composers are going to be breaking down her door. And I remember reading that. I was like, what? Why? Why? Like, what about me says composer? And that's kind of a question I've been asking since then. And sure enough, he was right. I started, and I got to do Dr. Atomic. And when I got to do Dr. Atomic, that was because a singer canceled. And they started looking for singers. So they did an audition of 20 something women. Again, someone nominated me. John Adams asked the Met to hire me. So I came into the Met program, and Ken Noda goes, John Adams wants you to be the lead in his opera. I'm like, what? How does he know my name? And then I had to sing for John. I had to sing for the director. I had to sing for all these people. And when I told my voice teacher at Juilliard about this, it's just an interesting comment. I share this because I think it's related. He said, well, I wouldn't have chosen Dr. Atomic for your debut. in a title role. Mostly because it's confusing. What type of music does this person sing? It's all over the map. It's soprano-ish, it's mezzo-ish, it's which is true. And it does kind of put me on a path that is the path I'm still on, of contemporary music, which of course is wondrous and I love it. But I didn't even know that. I didn't know that this break would also determine the way the following steps happened. What I was considered for, what I wasn't, what I was suddenly associated with, what I wasn't. And I've had to learn that being a good musician and being associated with being a good musician does not mean you're not a good singer. But at the time, that's what I thought it meant. I thought, are you saying I can't sing Mozart and I can't sing this? And that's not it at all. It's that a lot of singers maybe don't love contemporary music. So why not have me do it? That's the sense I'm making of it now with you talking about it. And I don't often verbalize these things, but yeah.
It's so interesting, that idea that it's a conversation we actually internally had a lot here at CAIC when we were starting, because we were, one of the things you have to figure out is what do you stand for? Like, what is what is this, the take that we were looking for on in singers, and what is the statement we're trying to make about song, and and on top of what trying to get people to realize what it is, because so many people just don't know these days. And it's funny, that's something that I've been thinking a lot about too, in the context of this pandemic a little bit, where as we've kind of been having this like reckoning with sort of the way all these isms play into the ways that we uphold these traditions and inform the traditions in the first place. And this idea that if you're a good musician, you're not a good singer, that seems oxymoronic to me. It seems insane. I remember, and it's funny, I don't think I'm alone in feeling that. I remember taking an instrumentalist friend of mine to see actually a production at the Met. It was a Mozart opera. I forget which one. But we got to intermission and he said, I'm confused. I always tell my students when they're studying Mozart on whatever instrument it is, that they should listen to singers sing Mozart, because that's going to give you the phrasing. And absolutely nobody is phrasing anything here. All I'm hearing is just a wall of sound and, one dynamic. And that anecdote really stuck out to me. I just thought, this mentality that is held amongst some, that if you are artistic or musical, I think I froze. I'm going to keep talking. That there's something about, it's like you're showing a sensitivity and you're showing a vulnerability, and there's something that's sort of anti-masculine or something about that. And so in a way it feels like there's some sort of like, this is not a fully formed thought either, but I'm coming back with the bad camera. Hi. There's something about it that feels, I don't know, just sort of homophobic and sexist to say that kind of a thing.
It is. I remember I was working with a wonderful soprano in Messiah, and I said, yeah, I'm getting some Handel. And she said, yeah, that always happens. The contemporary and Baroque people, we get lumped together. And I was like, well, why is that? Because we're good musicians, and like, so what? Good musicians should sing anything, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's like a energetic thing that presenters or opera companies associate certain atmospheres or emotional things with certain types of singers, and they put them into boxes. Like, I've loved doing Verdi Requiem. I've gotten to do it, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. And I always feel like, oh, here's one of my moments, a piece I love to do that is also a vocal piece where I get to really sing, and it's also an incredible piece of music. But I feel like I've lucked out because I'm like the contemporary girl who got into the Verdi thing, So My manager and I've been talking for years about trying to get more repertoire that is vocally challenging as opposed to musically challenging. Because I do a lot of repertoire that's tricky and harmonically this and that, but rarely do I get to do, bel canto or Strauss or, some French heroine or something.
Right. Well, and the funny thing is about the people who do those roles. I mean, if you think about the people who are the most famous for doing them and who have built careers doing them, and our favorite recordings of them, they all sound like great musicians.
Yes,
It's
totally,
it's
totally.
I believe it's a fallacy that you have to
Yeah.
be either or. And actually, one of the things I feel like we've always been fortunate to have at CAIC are people who are both great singers
Mhm.
and great musicians, because I just don't think you can have one without the other.
And I have to say, CIC is amazing just that it exists in America. I think it's interesting when you say, how are you doing so much song? Because I honestly want more. I don't have enough. I feel like if I do a recital tour or a couple recitals, I know I'll have to wait 5 years for the next. And it's often that way. I mean, last season was really unique. I had 5 different recital programs or something like this in the same season. That's never happened. I know it was bonkers. I don't know why. Um, and actually, I was supposed to sing this month right now, or yes, last month with fellow CAIC Susanna Phillips. We were supposed to have a duo program and go a different place. Anyway, um, but I think what I miss about those YCA days is that once you kind of get a little bit higher up in the career and you're now performing in slightly bigger venues, suddenly there are fewer and they don't have that many singers on the series. It's like, and then and so I kind of miss those student days when I could just do more. Although I will say, I think recital is the most demanding of the genres. I mean, even today I was trying to program a recital and I just hem and haw. It takes me forever. Think about key relationships, emotional kind of picture, landscape, balance, vocal balance, all of it. It takes me a long time to figure out a recital program and then to digest it and memorize it and live it and all that. I mean, it's a tall order. I mean, I think someone said that the average opera role really is on stage singing like in a recital, 25 minutes. Like most opera roles are not longer than 30 minutes. And in a recital, you're over an hour and it's full on you. I mean, all eyes on you. And speaking of technique and singing and musicianship, one of the best moments I had with Stephen King, the voice teacher, was when he connected expressivity with technique. I'll never forget it. He showed me something that was not, oh, here's a better aval. It was like, this is how you can actually be more expressive while singing better. And
Well,
that,
technique is supposed to serve expression, right? I mean,
right?
that's the only reason it's there.
Yeah, and it makes you more free. Like I think when I was earlier, I think maybe I hadn't found all of my support in my body and whatever. And so he had heard me then years ago. And I did have more straight tone. And yeah, I hadn't figured out these technical things, which I'm figuring out better now and have worked on. And so I got associated with that box we're talking about. And it's also wonderful because if you're going to call me a musician first, I won't be offended. But I want to know more about CIC because, like I was saying, in America, song, I won't say song is struggling, but it's different than Austria. It's different.
Sure. I mean, I would say I think song is struggling in the United States, and there are a few brother and sister organizations or colleague organizations that are doing great work, but there are a few of us, and I mean, like what Steve is in some ways the original with New York Festival of Song, Steve Blyer, and what they've done there, and when we started in 2010, there really wasn't much happening in Chicago, and it's changed a lot over the last 11 years. You know, we've got University of Chicago Presents always has, they try to, you know, at least every other season have some vocal things and a vocal recital. And I know that they're committed to including that in their programming. And, you know, Craig Terry and what he's created with Beyond the Aria is incredible. And it's created this wonderful, you know, much richer landscape than when we started a while back. But it's, you know, it was really born out of a recognition that, I mean, it was basically born out of a desire to want to do it more, like you're saying. I wanted to be able to do more of this. And I also wanted to, you know, I feel like the art form is important and it's something that needs a platform. So that's why we started one. And we're really grateful to this wonderful community that surrounds us and keeps us growing like we have over the last 10, 11 years.
Has the mission statement changed over the years? Has there, in that sense of what you want to do that's different? Or, because I've been thinking about that question in general, and I think it's a good question to ask during the pandemic. Any singer, you know, what am I about? What do I bring that the next person doesn't? Or what do I want to say? What do I care the most about? I mean, has that shifted?
Not during the pandemic for us necessarily, but it certainly has shifted over time. I can't remember if we changed the wording. I think we did change the wording just a tiny bit once, where the adjustment actually was just kind of, you know, we were three people who didn't, you know, we were starting something from scratch and we were feeling modest about that. And I think eventually at one point, a few years in, we changed the mission statement to saying that we want to make Chicago a world home for song. And you know, that's what the mission is in support of. And I think sort of acknowledging that ambition was just a moment of us saying, we can do this. And, you know, what we're doing is important. And, you know, just kind of having putting on our sort of big boy pants, as it were, for a second.
Speaking of a song, can we talk about your Grammy nomination? Have you talked about that a lot on this?
I'm supposed to be interviewing you.
No. I right before Nick and I started talking, we were saying, because I'm on an album that is nominated for a Grammy, the Michael Tilson Thomas piece, which you were going to be in.
Yes, but
so you would have been on two nominated things. That's in the best classical compendium category, and your nomination is in best solo vocal album. And here we are in a pandemic without a job. And I told Nick, I was like, didn't you feel this sort of bizarre, just, it feels crazy, right? To be applying for unemployment and getting nominated for this huge award. Like, what has that been like? Can I ask you a question?
On it? Yeah, no, sure. It's funny. So, you know, I was watching the nominations that morning because I just happened to wake up and I happened to flip on the nominations during the classical thing. I saw Nicola Benedetti presenting things. I was like, oh, this must be the classical category, so I'll watch. And then I thought to myself, don't watch this, you're jinxing it. So when she called the album, I actually immediately burst into tears at my kitchen table because, you know, you're just like, this is such a challenging moment. And so any kind of good news like that just means the world. So it is to experience, you know, the highs of that and the lows of, you know, relying on pandemic unemployment assistance and, you know, PPP loans and all the things that we're all trying to do to kind of survive this moment and get through to the other side is, it's like the sublime and the ridiculous, you know, it's
totally. It is.
I mean, what about for you? I mean, were you thrilled? I was so excited. It's funny because I remember being so disappointed when he realized he couldn't fit a tenor into the song cycle.
I know.
But I was so thrilled for you guys. I thought this is so exciting. And, you know, it's so great to see that project take wings like that because he was so excited about it. This, for people who don't know, Sasha's on this Grammy nominated recording of Settings of Rilke poetry by Michael Tilson Thomas, the conductor, who's also a composer. And, you know, we're both I consider myself very fortunate to be close with Michael. And, you know, him talking about it, saying, you know, oh, this, I'm so excited about this poem and I can't stop thinking about this poetry. And so it's so exciting to see it kind of, you know, get recognized like
Well,
this.
I have to say, it's worth mentioning that all three albums that I've been on that have been nominated, all living composers. And
Right.
I think that's fascinating, you know, and the two wins are both Mason Bates and John Adams. So in a way, the awards feel like they're also for peace. Like, this is an awesome piece, you know. If we could have more categories for best new blah blah blah, then we should. I mean, it's kind of like it's snuck in that way, you know what I mean? And Michael, this album, which also has his Anne Frank piece, it's a celebration really of him, and so for him to be acknowledged, I think it's just so beautiful. I mean, I was not expecting Michael to be such a great composer, because how can you be so good at so many things? Like, that's just not right. You know, you're not supposed to be. Um, but he is.
He's incredible. I mean, I always find talking to him, you know, in and around rehearsal or outside of rehearsal even, just so fascinating because he knows so many things about so many different things. And you hear that in his music. You know, his music is incredibly diverse, and it's like you see his inquisitive mind going everywhere, and yet somehow, because he's a genius, it all strings together into this cohesive narrative that is riveting.
Well, the thing I think about him, or one of the many things I think, is that he's like a kid. The thing I love about Michael is that he appreciates the moment so much. He's not like, oh, I've done this Brahms, you know, 100 times. This is where I do. No, it's like, I have to study the score. He's like discovering all the time. And I think that's why he's so good as a mentor in the New World Symphony, because he's paternal. Like, he has a paternal quality. When I went to his house once for time with my kids, he had made a macaroni with 5 cheeses. And he said, I watched the show to get it right, to get the macaroni, because I thought your kids would like macaroni. I'm like, are you joking me? You made a special macaroni for my kids? Like, that just shows it's a perfect snapshot. He cares, you know, he's a very sweet soul, but he's kind of like a kid. Like, you know what I mean? He's got like this infinite curiosity. And with the songs, like what I have found about Michael, he's funny because I think he is a perfectionist. I don't think he would admit that. But when we were doing those Rilke songs, it was like, oh, well, do you think I should change that? And I'm like, everything is awesome. Like, you don't realize it, but it's awesome. Don't, like, it's been interesting. Okay, so here's the plug. I am doing this project with a bunch of composers right now. And it's been so interesting. I need to write about it. Actually, speaking of writing, your awesome blog that you've been doing, I want to do something like that, like where just to comment on different people, the way, the questions they ask, the process they have, the way poetry happened, the way we talked about vocal right, like, it's just been so interesting. And where was I going with that? Michael, I lost it. I don't know, but I'm doing this album of songs written in relation to the pandemic, or it's essentially just written during the pandemic. That's the idea. And I wanted everyone to be in their 40s and under, just because it was one way of narrowing the list, frankly, but also existentially, I thought I kind of want to hear about that demographic, because as much as I love all of my older composer friends and want songs from them, I kind of want to shift the focus, and I want to work with people I haven't worked with before. So I asked 17 composers. There's only one that I've done his music before, which is Nico Muhly. I just had to ask Nico. And it's been really fascinating how people go about writing song. And Michael, he is like, he writes the lyrics at the same time that he writes the music. And it's so inspired. He's like a big sponge. And I think that you're right. The Copland, the Mahler, the Barber, the Bernstein, it's all in there. Like, it's just, and but it comes out rather like it's always existed. Like, it doesn't sound unsure or experimental, you know?
No, not at all. I mean, he knows where he's going, and And yet he never loses that sense of wonder, you know, like you're saying, he's this childlike wonder that's always there. I think that that is so key to being an artist, because you have to constantly look at things with fresh eyes. And I personally feel like I've learned a lot from him that way, and it sounds like you have too. I mean, he's extraordinary. I hope that you guys win on.
Well, you too. I have
Thank
no
you.
doubt. I have no doubt that you.
Knockwood. I don't know. Cecilia Bartoli is pretty stiff competition, but I would love to have a paperweight to, you know, have on my mantle. So.
Well, and also shout out to Myra Huang, whom I've gotten to get to know a little bit from afar during this time, who's so exquisite, and on the album she's also amazing, just as you are.
Well,
I'm sure you feel really proud. I mean, even it just the acknowledgement already is incredible.
It is, honestly. I mean, and this kind of touches on the things you're talking about, kind of coping with the pandemic. It's interesting. The decision to make every single album, really, I mean, those decisions have to come from us these days. There's nobody out there saying do this or giving you permission. You have to want to do it. And the same thing with starting this organization here. And so you constantly are pushing the boulder up the hill in the most joyous of ways. But that kind of independent spirit, I'm really grateful for those skills in this moment, because it's the thing that, at least personally, is allowing me to navigate. And I mean, watching you from afar, you know, it seems like it's the same for you. You know, you've got your Sasha sessions going, and you're like constantly making these amazing videos of songs. I don't know how you play and sing at the same time. Like,
I just sing badly. That's what that.
No, it's gorgeous. And you know, it's you just keep creating, and I really admire that. I mean, do you feel that that's kind of helping you navigate and stay up?
Well, yeah. And I now, like today, I was trying to reset my music library, because sometimes like music explodes, like if I'm like trying to find some song or something. And I looked at this folder that I created at the beginning of the summer, which was like a joy folder, like songs and arias that I just want to sing. And I haven't had a folder like that in 15 years. And I looked at that today and I thought, no, keeping that. Like maybe I'll modify what's in it. But no longer should I just have a big stack of all the music coming up. I should also just do music. And that has been really wonderful. That started at the beginning. It's like, I'm not going to sing the music I'm singing in the fall, because who knows if the fall is coming. Let me find old friends. And it's kind of like talking to you. It's like, I feel like a theme of the pandemic has been old friends and reconnecting. And it's interesting we're talking about Michael, because Michael Tilson Thomas is one of the few people that just reached out to me out of the blue just to say, how are you doing? And those little moments, like people that also are musicians that also care about me as a human, it just really struck me. Like, and that's kind of continued throughout. It's like, oh, you mean we can talk outside of a gig? You know, like that sounds so silly. Of course, I don't really mean that. You know what I mean? But it touched me in a new way, because so often things in my life have been associated with a gig. So now to have things in my life that are so far from any gig, you know, they become a little bit more crystallized and clear, you know. So I found all this music that I'm like, why haven't I sung this? This has been sitting here. I had this in college. I want to work on this piece. Okay, it's going into this folder. And sometimes sharing on social media has felt like an audience, I have to say. So when I'm practicing and I'm like, oh, just grab the phone, just put it there. And I put the phone on and I press record. And that pressure of knowing that I'm going to share this, or I'm hoping to, it adds that little bit of that little frisson of, you know, like not nerves, but performance. I'm performing. Pressure, yeah.
Which is so important, right? Because, you know, you have to keep staying in shape with that, because as you said earlier, you've got to cope with it in the real life.
It's going to be weird though, isn't it, Nick? Like when we're back, it's going to be strange for that. Now I'm so used to being home. I mean, have you thought about this? Like the lifestyle we lived, and just how busy it was, and just go. And I think that's going to feel, you know, at once refreshing and overwhelming.
Yeah, I've had the great fortune of getting to sing for a live audience
Oh, that's awesome.
once during this in the summer last year. It was in Lake Tahoe.
Amazing.
And I mean, you know, we were outside. They had what this organization Classical Tahoe did was amazing. They like built a stage in this person's yard right on the lake, and it was gorgeous. And you know, they had a socially, I think law allowed us to have 25 people in the audience or something. So, and they were all
Really?
distanced outside. But
Wow.
oh my God. I mean, going somewhere, being in a different place, and like warming up to go to rehearsal in a foreign space without my piano. And, you know, it was overwhelming. And I was so grateful for it, but I also found it so exhausting. And I thought, oh my gosh, like doing this is staying in shape, and I am out of shape right now. And I mean, you know, it was obviously there were things, you know, you couldn't go inside in any space because COVID. And so you'd find yourself like warming up in a porta potty or, you know,
Yeah.
like next to a tree outside by the lake. I mean, it was truly bizarre, but um it was intense. And I keep thinking about that too, how it's going to be intense when we go back to this, but it's going to be great.
Yeah. Thank God it's coming eventually. I did a very short job where I had to fly to Los Angeles. And I've thought about this in the past, how our jobs, how our lifestyle affects our brain and the way we think. And I don't know about you, but I have wondered whether it creates like a certain nervous energy because there's always like another thing. You get off the plane and then it's about whoever's picking you up or however you're getting to where you're going. And then you're figuring out where you're going and how to get into where you're going. And then you're like, what time zone? Who am I need to call? Yeah. Oh, what time is rehearsal? Okay, well, how do I get there? And then where am I finding food? How do I find food? And then it's like, this is every day. And so your brain, I find, is always like, um, what's most important? What's next most important? What needs to be done? You know, you're always like doing this checklist. Make sure you covered your bases. It's not like you get to cruise. Like most people have a job, and I'm not saying their jobs are easy, but there's a pattern that creates a certain sanity and comfort because it's a pattern, and we have no patterns.
Right. And now we do have a pattern, and we've had it for a year. And like, we're gonna have to I mean, ideally, we will have to let that go soon and create a new pattern of randomness.
Yeah.
It's intense. I gotta say, we've just in these last few minutes, if anybody has any questions, please put them in the Facebook comments. You have love from Terry and Bob Ryan in San Francisco.
Oh.
They're very sweet. Thank you for tuning in every week, you guys.
P.S. I'm actually headed to San Francisco next. I had so Dallas Opera was supposed to do a Joby Talbot Jean Shear piece right now that they just had to cancel, and at the same time, Opera Parallel in the Bay Area is doing a Joby Jean piece, which I premiered some years ago called Everest, and they're doing an animated version.
So you're coming out here to record?
I'm coming. Yeah, I have to quarantine, and then we should get coffee outside if you're there. We should like meet outside if you.
I will likely be here. So
Okay.
that would be really great. Looks like I think everybody we have love from Terry and Bob, and you know, no questions because apparently
Okay.
we answered all the questions.
That's
So
okay.
thank you so much for doing this, and we've got to have you come sing sometime.
Absolutely.
Let me just say this little spiel to our audience. Thank you, audience, for tuning in, and you know, please be sure to tune in next Thursday. We're going to be back with baritone Edward Nelson and pianist Ronnie Michael Greenberg, who are our featured artists for our Winter Leader Lounge, which will actually broadcast next Friday, the very next day at 7 p.m. Central, and it broadcasts through the weekend. So those dates are March 4th and for the Heard Over the Piano, and March 5th through 7th for the Winter Leader Lounge. So please join us again for that. And Sasha, thank you so much for being here. And Facebook will see you in a week.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Bye, Facebook.